What's up, guys? Welcome again to my channel. And in this video, I wanted to make a short, or let's say a short podcast from me reading um, a paper, kind of like a paper. So I just read and just doing the introduction right now, and I feel like when I read, my muscles are more relaxed to talk, and I feel what a huge difference because when I actually start a video, this is my first time in my on the day that I spoke English that I speak English, and yeah, so I can feel the different, guys. So basically this year I want to keep reading more often, and the big difference that I'm gonna do is just read just as the way that I did it. So because like this I feel like that heavy, that kind of load, that being reading with out loud, which is super different when I read just like super slow but out loud, but in a low volume is not is super different when you read out loud, like when you're talking. I want to recall this for me the next year. Let's see what is the difference maybe while recording another video. I'm gonna do the Spanish version of this topic. I think is quite interesting, I think. So I'm gonna read it in Spanish. I'm gonna do a reading in Spanish. Okay, I'll see you until my next video. Take care. Bye bye. Well, I choose this topic because I it seems like pretty interesting. So I want to focus on kind of that change that our brain have when reading and just knowing another language. How morality changes in a foreign language. What defines who we are? Our habit, our atheistic one. This is a new word. Our our aesthetic taste, our memories is pressed. I would answer that if there is any part of me that in, that sits on my core, that is an essential part of who I am, then suddenly, surely it must be my moral center, my deep state sense of right and wrong. Yet, like many other people who speak more than one language, I often have the sense that I am a slightly different person in each of my languages. More assertive, assertive in English, more relaxed in French, more sentimental in Czech. It is possible that along these differences, my moral compass also points in somewhat different directions depending on the language I'm using at that time. Psychologists who study moral judgment have become very interested in this question. Several recent studies have focused on how people think about ethics in a non-native language, as might take place, for example, among a group of delegates at the United Nations using the lingua franca to hash out a resolution. The findings suggest that when people are confronted by moral dilemmas, they do indeed respond differently when considering them in a foreign language than we use in their native tongue. In a 2014 paper led by Albert Costa, volunteers were presented with a moral dilemma known as the trolley problem. Imagine that a runaway trolley is carrying toward a group of 5 people standing on the track, unable to move. You are next to a switch that can shift the trolley to a different set of tracks, thereby sparing the 5 people but resulting in a death. of one who is standing on the side track. Do you pull the switch? Most people agree that they would, but what if the only way to stop the trolley is by pushing a large stranger off a footbridge into his path? People tend to be very reluctant to say they would do this, even though in both scenarios one person is sacrificed to save five. But Costa and his colleagues found that posing the dilemma in a language that volunteers have learned as a foreign language, as a foreign tongue, dramatically increased their state willingness to show the sacrificial person of the footbridge. But fewer than 20% of the respondents working in their native language to about 50% of those using the foreign language. Both native Spanish and English speakers were included. With English and Spanish as their respective foreign language, the results were the same for both groups, showing that the effect was about using a foreign language and not about which particular language, English or Spanish, was used. Using a very different experimental setup, Jenny Gapel and her colleagues also found that using a foreign language shifted their participants' moral verdict. In their studies, volunteers read description of art that appears to harm no one, but that many people find morally reprehensible. reprehensible. For example, stories in which siblings enjoy entirely consensual and safe sex, and someone cooked and ate his dog after it had been killed by a car. Those who read the stories in a foreign language, either English or Italian, judge these actions to be less wrong than those who who read who read them in their native tongue. Why does it matter whether we judge morality in our native language or a foreign one? According to the according to one explanation, such judgment involves two separate and competing modes of thinking. One of these, a quick, good level feeling, and the other, carefully deliberation about the greatest good for the greatest number. When we use a foreign language, we unconsciously sink into a more deliberated mode simply because the effort of operating in our non-native language cause our cognitive, cognitive system to prepare for extraneous activity. This may seem paradoxical, but is in line with feeling that reading math problems are hard to read from makes people less likely to make careless mistakes, although these results have proven difficult to replicate. An alternative explanation is that differences arise between native and foreign tongues because our childhood language vibrate with greater emotional intensity than do those learned in a more academic setting. As a result, moral judgments made in a foreign language are less laden with the emotional reactions that surface when we use a language learned in childhood. There is strong evidence there is strong evidence that memory intertwines a language with experiences and interactions through which the language was learned. For example, people who are bilingual are more likely to recall an experience if prompted in the language in which that event occurs. Our childhood languages, learned in the throes of passionate emotion, whose childhood, after all, is not a stretch through which with an evidence of love, rage, wonder, and punishment become infused by deep feeling. By comparison, languages acquired in acquired late in life, especially if they are learned through restricted interaction in the classroom or badly delivered over computer screen and headphones, enter our minds, black off the emotionality that is present for that is present or present is present for their native speakers. Catherine Harris and her colleagues offer compelling evidence for the visceral responses that a native language can provoke, using the succinct electrical conductivity to measure emotional arousals. Conductivity increased as adrenaline surged. They had native Turkish speakers who had learned English late in life listen to words and phrases in both languages. Some of these were natural to whereas others were taboo, shit, or convey reprimands, shame, shame on you. Their participant skin's response reveal high heightened arousal for taboos were compared to natural ones, especially when these were spoken in their native Turkish. But the strongest difference between languages was evident with reprimand. The volunteer responds very madly to the English phrases, but had powerful reaction to the Turkish one, with some reporting that they heard heard these reprimands in voices of close relative. If language can serve as a container for potent memories of our earliest transgression and punishment, there is not surprising that such emotional association may color moral judgments made in our native language. The balancing type even further toward this explanation by a recent study published in the journal Cognition. This new research involves scenarios in which good intentions lead to bad outcomes. Someone gives a homeless person a new jacket, only to have the poor man beat up by others who believe he has stolen it. Or good outcomes occur despite dubious motives. A couple adopts a disabled child to receive money from the state. Reading this in a foreign language rather than a native language led participants to place greater weight on outcomes and less weight on intentions in making moral judgments. These results clash with the notion that using a foreign language makes people think more deeply, because other research has shown that carefully reflection makes people think more about the intention that underlie people's reaction rather than less. But the result to mesh with the idea that when using a foreign language, muted emotional responses, less sympathy for those with noble intentions, less outrage, outrage for those with nefarious motive, motive, Di- diminish, diminish the impact of intention. This explanation is bolstered by findings that patients with brain damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, an area that is involved in emotional responding, shown a similar pattern of responses, with outcomes privilege over intern, intentions. What they what then is a multilingual person true moral self? It is my moral memories, the reverber- reverberations of emotionality change interaction that taught me what it means to be good, or it is the reasoning I'm able to apply when free of such unconscious constraints, or perhaps this line of research simply illuminates what is true for all of us, regardless of how many languages we speak. Our moral compass is a combination of the earliest forces that have shaped us and the way in which we escape them.